Little Hand says it's time to rock and roll.
Bring the noise.
Go.
Good evening, folks, and welcome to the Etims-Podcast, the first of 2014. The podcast that takes a 15% cut with the truth anytime it can. I'm Desi. Joining me tonight is Hector Bandido.
Good evening.
From a cupboard somewhere in Shettleston, and also from Stoke, the pilot of the Terrier Carrier, Ralph Malf.
How you doing?
Thanks for joining us, Ralph. Ralph, as always, we like to go to the big stories of the week. Obviously, we had David Moyes failing to get to the cup final last night, ex-Celtic David Moyes. But the big news of this week, Ralph, how have you been following Hayley's suicide on Coronation Street?
I didn't want to watch it. It was all upsetting. I'm not a big fan of soap operas, obviously. But it was great to see some class acting, and I think Roy would be glad that Hayley would stiff again.
Well, that was very good. I hope you used that part in the diary. But also, the first thing I should do this year, I know we've got a few resolutions to try and improve stuff, but the first thing I have to do is make a public apology to Jeanette Finlay following our last podcast with Jeanette. It's not because of the poor recording quality, she forgave us for that, but it's because I used a photo of John Reid on our Spreaker site to advertise the podcast interview with Jeanette Finlay, and I think she was a bit upset it wasn't John's best side that we used for the picture, so apologies to Jeanette for that. I hope I never put anyone off. Hector, you were going to send out a Twitter bag question to the followers this evening. Have you did that?
I've done it, yes. And the question to them is, if you could ask Peter Law one question, what would it be?
Okay, a very good question. Ralph, if you could possibly ask Peter Lawwell one question, what would it be? If you could imagine yourself in that scenario where you are sitting in front of Peter Lawwell, Ralph, what do you think that would be the one question that would go through your mind? What would you say to him?
Oh, that's a difficult one.
How do you pronounce your second name, perhaps?
that would spring to. I think I just have to call him Peter first of all.
Pedro.
To avoid embarrassing myself. I think I would ask him why the club is given the impression that it's moving away from its roots. First of all, why the PLC seems to be the main thing at the moment, and why we're forgetting about the Irishness, why we're forgetting about the man in the street that goes to watch your games. I think that would be the first thing I would ask him.
Well, hypothetically, Ralph, just go with us here, right? Just imagine you were actually Peter Law, and you were going to answer that question. How do you think Peter would answer that question?
Do you know, I wonder if he would deflect it and maybe say something along the lines of, we're doing well, what are we doing wrong? Do you know what? I think he'd actually be receptive to ideas. He'd certainly listen. But as to whether or not they're doing anything about it, I don't know. Which is odd, really, because, do you know, we got that picture, didn't we? That fellow, the Motherwell fan, that had got that terrible view. And to be fair to John Paul, he's done something about it straight away. So maybe they are listening.
Just to bring anyone who's not clear on what Ralph's referring to there, Hector had a photo. Was it from a colleague, Hector?
It was from it was my colleague. Just to be clean on it, my colleague wasn't at the match. It was from a friend of a friend who was a fellow, or is a fellow Motherwell fan, who sent it on. He sent it on to me, and I obviously pinged it on to Ralph for the diary. And basically, if you go onto our website and have a look at today's diary, it's in there,
yeah.
And you'll see the stewards. I think there's 3 stewards sitting directly facing where the person was sitting in the away section, blocking their view of basically about a third of the pitch, which was quite ridiculous.
Do you know that could, we should make a note, that could be a great Twitter question for the next time we do a podcast. What would be your collective noun for a group of Celtic stewards? I'm sure if you get a few good replies, probably a lot of them would be banned by Apple if we ever managed to get it up on iTunes. But I think we would get quite a few replies. That's one for the future. Group of fuds. A designer of stewards. But also on today's diary, Ralph, this year talking about moving away from its roots. We also had the Planet Football Private Eye note where Hector and I discussed this, and the fact that it seems to be a bit of shit stirring initially by Rangers fans, and they were talking about the cheap loans from the co-op and also the land deal by the Glasgow District Council. And Peter Lawwell, I believe, came out and made quite a few rants about this, as in it was a lot of rubbish. But the interesting point that for me on the Private Eye note was this, and I'll quote it: "One interesting omission from the otherwise detailed Celtic accounts for 2013 relates to related party transactions during the year. There is a reference to, and in quotes, a number of transactions, principally for the supply of goods and services, between the club itself, the subsidiary Celtic FC, and the deals are with organisations in which some directors have an interest as directors or shareholders of the other contracting party." Private Eye adds, "Shareholders are assured that such transactions were at arm's length and of an insignificant nature, so no information is provided as to which directors, what goods and services, and how much payment was made. And as they say, not exactly how the related party game is usually played. Shouldn't it be up to the shareholders to decide about the shortness of arms and the significance and that requires full information, and they've given Celtic a yellow card because of it." And I thought that was really interesting, the fact that there's discretionary payments being made, which I've never ever seen mentioned before. So I don't know what exactly that entails. Which, and one of the guys today, we were discussing it today, says, "Oh, it's obviously a lot of nonsense. It doesn't mean much." But if it doesn't mean much, why hide it at all? Which I thought was a bit strange.
Well, I don't think you could list absolutely every single transaction that you make, every single payment that you make and such. You know, like when they put things at the bottom of miscellaneous this and miscellaneous that. Just simply because it is uninteresting and tiresome. I think, mind you said, if I was sitting in front of somebody and asking him the same sort of question, I think he would probably look at it as tiresome and, just mischief making.
Well,
I'm surprised that Private Eye have ran with it, because what you'll notice about Private Eye is, especially in that section, they just hint at things, which maybe to try and get a reaction sometimes. And the one thing I will say for them, if somebody challenges them, they will print it. They'll not ignore it, and they'll give prominence to any further correspondence, like in the letters page, or if somebody comes back with something. But I think the club should move it clear quickly.
Yeah, I would disagree, Ralph, because, for instance, I've got 50 shares in Celtic, and I'm totally unaware that a party in relation to Brian Wilson, for instance, is maybe getting a couple of £1,000 payment for this or that, and it's purely for his consultation, as these things always seem to be. And I'm not saying, again, the fact is you don't know what's going on, which kind of makes it all the more kind of intriguing. We chastise these politicians who are forever meeting with lobbyists and taking back candors for this event and that event, and so it's just a case of surely it's a question that's worthwhile asking, in my opinion. As anyway, I thought it was quite interesting. But anyway. I think they'll just come down on it again and just rubbish it. But like I say, it's better to have a section of the support that's questioning. It's better to have it out there if there's any inclination of any sort of wrongdoing. And I think that's the difference between us and maybe another club. Hector, that's a good point. Exactly, Ralph, that's a very good point. Hector, could you imagine, Hector, you being in charge of, say, something like Celtic, and call meeting for these people, for people who may have interests, varied interests, but when you sit them all around a table, they all basically sit and nod their head and take every word you say as gospel. Surely that's not a good business model.
I could never envisage any group of Celtic fans doing that. I'd expect a number of questions, based upon what's concerning fans today, to be aimed at the powers that be. But just going back to your point about the private eye thing, listen, part of it is mischief making, there's no two ways about it, because the whole land deal thing, it touches upon Glasgow City Council, but is anyone with a modicum of common sense, or let's call it Google, would do a search in Lennoxtown? It's in Eastern Bartonshire, so it's got nothing to do with Glasgow Council, and nothing to do with Glasgow Labour, or SNP for that matter. Eastern Bartonshire, I think it was the Liberals who were running the council at that time. And the same Eastern Bartonshire Council also are responsible for selling the land, I believe, or partly being responsible for Murray Park, which is also Eastern Bartonshire. So some of it's mischief making, but I agree with you, Desi. I think if there's the slightest hint of anything untoward here with any directors within Celtic, I would want it investigated, want it challenged, even if it is for £10,000 or £20,000. I don't care. We should be whiter than white here, or cleaner than clean. So I think we should have a look at it.
Yeah, because the last time I can remember, like, Rangers have appeared in the city section at the very back, this Forest Crossword. They've appeared in it many times in the wee kind of football and finance section. But the only time I remember Celtic being mentioned in it before was when John Reid was brought in to Celtic, and they happened to mention the fact that Dermot Desmond had just happened to take control of a very big security company, which were in charge of things like security scanners at airports and various things, and he was looking to maybe get a wee kind of inkling on how to move into that market. And obviously having an ex-Home Secretary and a man in charge, and a man with the connections of Mr. Reid, who I think's held quite a lot of positions in the British Cabinet. That was kind of the inference was he was there more for his connections than he was for what he could possibly do to help on the Celtic board. But there you are. So there you go. So Celtic and politics, that would never get discussed, would it? Celtic and politics. What's your chances of that coming up?
Mm-hmm. But it's just the way of the business world. If you're looking to do something and you know somebody who does it, then you ring them. It doesn't matter if they're a fellow director or whatever. That's the way things are done. And I don't see anything wrong with that, as long as, I suppose, it's all above board and there's transparency. Is that the right word?
It is. Okay, so Hector, you've sent that out to the Twitter bag. We will come to that later on. We've got a few items to cover tonight. Hopefully we can get through them quite quickly for a change. And the first one is this. Okay, that was a fanfare for the Commons man in relation to our current footballing superstar, Kris Commons. Hector, have you been impressed with Commons? How he's went from good player to fat, useless layabout to superstar this season?
He's been very impressive, hasn't he? There's no two ways about it. He's I think along with Virgil van Dijk, they've easily been Celtic's two best players this season. Virgil looks a class act in defence, but everything that we seem to do going forward in terms of scoring goals or creating opportunities, Kris Commons is at the centre of it, and I think it's been a fantastic transformation. He's in the top of his game, and just watching a guy playing so well just now, or for quite a few months now, it's been great to watch. And some of his movement, he always seems to find what's good about him is his awareness of space and how he seems to find 5 yards, 10 yards of space so frequently. And it's not luck, that's just football awareness and intelligence that he does that. And I think playing as a kind of almost a number 10, just off the striker and advanced in the midfield, it seems to suit him perfectly. So no, he's been terrific, and in my view would fully deserve to be Player of the Year right now.
Yep. Ralph, I noticed you in the diary, I don't know if you were incriminating yourself, but you happened to mention that Commons alarming off the other night. How have you getting on with that restraining order? Because you seem to be in a bit of a love fest at the moment with him.
Yeah, I've been told to park else further down the street. Commons has been fantastic. He's scored more goals at this stage of the season than Gary Hooper did this time last year. Nobody I think ever thought that he was going to be a replacement for him, but he's stepped up to the plate. It must be costing the bookies a fortune with his first goal scorer every week. And if we could, I'd be happy for him to be up front with somebody else, to be honest with you, because he hangs right. He's a poacher. When he's in the penalty area, he's a poacher and he finishes well. When he first came to Celtic, I didn't rate him at all, to be honest. I didn't think there was anything to him. I think it was it a cup semi-final against Aberdeen, where he scored a free kick early on in the game, scored another one after that.
What do you mean even after his goal against Rangers and his first touch in a Celtic jersey? Is that not his first game against Rangers?
No.
Yeah.
I can't remember. First time I seen him was against
Aberdeen. First game was a Sunday against Rangers.
I think it was, yeah. He knocked him back. Remember they were trying to buy him and he didn't go and he came to us.
And to be fair, they wouldn't have had the £300,000 necessary, would they?
You're not confusing him with Barry Robson, are you? Mind he scored with his first touch against Aberdeen.
That's right. But Ralph, I would just...
I just remember being at that game and seeing him score against Aberdeen.
I would your comment about Commons being a poacher. I definitely don't think he is a poacher at all. I think if you look at him, he plays 10-15 yards off a striker. And what Lennon's done is given that flexibility. He can go left, go right, or go central. It's just, I think his awareness, he just knows when to make a run into space. And I think if you had a good number 9, that wonderful position that we never seem to fill anymore, a wonderful number 9, not far off him, I think it'd be fantastic. We'd score so many goals.
He does pick up a lot of the scraps, and you're right, it probably is awareness of thinking, right, if it doesn't go in, this is where it's going to be. And he does seem, poacher's probably not right, predator's maybe a better word.
I agree with that.
John Collins,
ultimately, he's on the end of the moves, and he's putting the ball in the net, and long may that continue.
Yeah, well, I like the fact he's made quite a few comments currently on the Twitter feed. Obviously, this will be a bit dated by the time people hear, but it's things like it's important that we get players in of a good quality who are going to give us that extra edge so we can compete with the best. And if I'm not scoring, I want to be creating. I mean, that's a good team ethic, which is always good to see, isn't it?
If you watch him on the park, he does have a great attitude. He'll track back, he'll tackle, he puts himself about a bit, which again, it's all about attitude, and he's certainly bought into the Celtic ethos, hasn't he?
I've got a feeling he may be getting called in tomorrow into Peter Lowell's office due to the fact he's made some derogatory remarks. You could see that we were just lacking that cutting edge this term. So we need to invest. Surely Peter's got to haul him over the coals for that sort of abusive language, Ralph.
Well, spend some money. Yeah, that'll upset him.
How dare you?
What do you think Peter would say, Ralph, if you put that question to him?
Well, it's difficult to imagine an answer, but you would think that with the club being probably better off financially than it ever has been in its history, that he would maybe release those purse strings.
Can I just quickly point out, Hector, I've just looked at the photo again of the stewards. There's actually 3 stewards facing the seats, facing the stand, so to speak, and there's one walking round the kind of space between the seats and the ground, the grass, and then there's also one facing the pitch. So I don't know what the guy facing the pitch is watching. I think he might just be a cameraman, but they've got him conveniently placed in the only space where the disabled guy could have possibly actually saw any action. So that was hell of a nice of them.
That's mad.
Shocking. But Chris Commons, I actually posted a tweet the other week saying should he maybe even be considered for the prize number 7 jersey. So I actually thought maybe he'd earned that sort of accolade this season. Because we're a wee bit short of stars in the team at the moment, and I don't think we're going to go out and buy one. I wouldn't imagine talk of £6 million for Robert Snodgrass. As much as I like Robert Snodgrass and him being a good Celtic man, I kind of see him being like a superstar to come in and claim the number 7 jersey. So I was wondering, is that maybe something we could reward someone like Kris Commons for giving him that for now? Hector?
Well, what would Chris Gorman say about
that? We've been waiting for this guy to get promoted from the under-19s for months now. Chris Gorman. No one saw him hide or hair. It's a disgrace. But Hector, so do you think there's any mileage in something like that? Do you think Kris Commons could step up and be the next kind of big star? Because I'm about to allude to the fact that our current star in Mr. Samaras looks to have went from hero to passport control, to be honest. I think he's soon to be out of the door. So I think
I would leave Commons with the number he's got. I mean, unless he said, I would love to wear that number based on, the significance at Celtic, but unless he asks for the number, I would leave him, because I think if he doesn't want it, it might put added pressure on him, to live up to expectations.
Mm-hmm.
And if he's doing so well just now, why change it? So unless he really demanded that jersey and, I'm getting that jersey and I'm off kind of thing, which he wouldn't do, I would just leave him as he is.
Fair enough. Okay, so what about the Sammi point? I know you were a big fan, Hector. Do you think well, first of all, Hector, there has been rumours of a rumour mill. I know you're very good friends with Rui Miller. Could you shed any light on those rumours?
Well, far be it from me to discuss rumours on the site, but yes, apparently we're going to have one before the transfer window slams shut. Copyright Jim, get it right up you, White. So yeah, we're looking to have one done, and as you know, we all kind of throw things into the mix. So if anybody out there has any nonsense they want to share with us, either drop us a note through the mailbox or contact us through Twitter and we'll come back to you. But yeah, we'll have one out before the window slams shut.
I was absolutely raging tonight. Today when I opened up the Metro and I saw, I think it was the Metro, news that Stephen Presley is interested in taking Dylan McGeoch to Coventry, because he's always my rumour mill stalwart, Stephen Presley, to return to Celtic Park. So I was a wee bit upset we've got a twist on the Stephen Presley story this time. So I'll have to apologise. That story of Stephen Presley returning as a coach will not be appearing this year. I believe Sammy's going to be departing. Ralph, do you think he'll be missed, or do you think it's a case of the Sammi Appreciation Society has kind of started dying away again a wee bit?
To be honest, he hasn't done a great deal this season, has he? In Europe he disappointed, but I think that was largely due to the predictability of hoofing the ball up to him, and he was just getting crowded out all the time. As well as that, the best we've played this season, the two spectacular wins away from home, Hearts and Motherwell, he didn't feature in them, and I think we play better as a team without him. And although he's been a great servant, and we wish him well, I think is the best way to put it.
Hector?
It's kind of mixed emotions with Sammi, because his first maybe 18 months to 2 years, it was very frustrating watching him, and he was kind of easily moved off the ball and always seemed to make the wrong decision or run the ball down the wrong avenue towards the corner flag when he had two players inside to pass it to. But then he just suddenly seemed to step up to the mark, and I thought for about a year or so there he was terrific. And probably in Europe, our best player at the highest level. And I think Ralph's point there about, I think we did depend too much on him in Europe. It was almost as if give it to Sammi and hopefully he can go and create something. But I remember, I think it was Lennon said an interesting point a while ago about Sammi, that he's just one of those players that, you know how players are all different. Some need a kick in the arse and some need to feel loved. It was just fascinating that he said Sammy's one of those players that if he feels wanted and he's really happy, he's terrific. But if he doesn't, he's into his shell. And I think you can actually see that with him. You know, you can actually see his games totally changed the last couple of months since he had the old contract thing over his head.
Yeah.
And we're led to believe, I don't think it's a secret, that the offer he's had is actually less than what he's currently getting. So when you weigh that up,
that's just ridiculous.
Do you think it's a 15% cut, or do you think it'd be more than
that? I don't know, but I mean, if you think about Sammi, he actually took a wage cut to come to Celtic from Man City. That was quite a significant one, drop in salary. So to do that, he come to Celtic, do really well, particularly at the highest stage, and be a big player for us. And apparently he was offered less. I don't know how much less. I don't think it was a lot. But I think if you're a player and you've done so well, I would think, well, wait a minute, what's the point of me being here? So if that is the case, and we're led to believe it is the case, you can understand his view on things. So, you know, I'd like to keep him at the top of his game, but if it's not to be, it's not to be.
Yep. I was going to come on to Joe Ledley being next, but we'll just kind of quickly touch on Thomas Rogic, Ralph, who's now went back to Australia, which I don't think was any surprise to anyone, given the amount of noise his manager had been making, his Australia manager had been making in regards to the World Cup this year. But do you have any thoughts, Ralph, on the kind of, how can we phrase this, the actual kind of, this being the eventual result? This guy came over and he was meant to have been basically going to be like our next kind of young midfielder coming through. I'm trying to think of some comparisons. I think Paul McStay's a wee bit a different player, but he was going to be this kind of stylish midfielder that was going to come through and take our midfield into the next generation, so to speak. And this didn't seem to happen whatsoever. Do you think you just kind of get lost somewhere on the training field, because they never seem to get much chance actually on the playing pitch?
I think he was made a scapegoat, wasn't he, for the Morton game, I think. Lennon's got the same attitude as O'Neill used to have, and he would play his favourites, whatever. So Rogic would have had to have done something spectacular to break in ahead of probably Charlie Mulgrew or Joe Ledley even, but Ledley's been injured most of the time. And it just never happened. Lennon sees him every day in training. The boy had come halfway around the world for a shot at this, so you can't question his commitment to it. But I think Lennon must have seen something in him that just wasn't quite right and wasn't quite ready for the step up to Premier League football.
Yeah.
He's away now. We've refused to sell him, I believe. The offer was on the table to buy him back and take him back to Australia, but we refused to do that. Whether or not we're just holding out and hoping he has a good World Cup and we can get the money increased, because he is still on quite a long contract, isn't he?
Yeah, I think so.
Whether or not that's a plan, or whether or not or whether the plan is just to get him out there, get him playing again, and maybe even build his confidence back up and give him another shot. We don't know, but Stefan Johansson coming in certainly means that he's further down the pecking list.
Well, that's what I was going to say, Hector. Is it this one of those things that is it maybe too early in Rogic's career for that leap, as in a lot of players, and I think a lot of fans too. Like we don't really have any gauge of how massive it is, how big a club Celtic really are when you're actually flung into that bear pit of having to present yourself every day in, day out, say at Lennoxtown, and make yourself part of the actual first team squad. But then when we've had quite a few players, I think, over the last few years, which have been brought in who have been found wanting. Which even though we've had quite some successes in the transfer market, there have been some that have clearly been shown up when it comes to making that grade. I'm not saying Rogic's the same, because I think he's obviously another Baldy, a work in progress. But when we're bringing players like Ralph says, Stefan Johansson in, who appears to be a guy who's worked his socks off to get where he is, improved himself, is it a case of saying, well, is there any point in trying to bring these young guys in when we could go away to Norway and buy a guy at, say, $1 million, $1.5 million, who's obviously proved they can probably step right into the first team? Hector?
I don't know if I'd agree with that, because Johansson, he's not even kicked a ball yet, so we don't know if he'll be a success or not. We may end up wasting £1.5 to £2 million on someone who just doesn't, do the business at Celtic.
Well, maybe I phrased that wrongly, but say for instance, right, you've got a Thomas Rogic, right, who comes from Australia, has got this star quality, he's going to be this great player. Everyone, as far as we can tell, raves about him, but when it comes to actually getting time on the pitch, it doesn't happen. But then we go out and spend, like, say, $1 million to $2 million, depending on what report you read, on someone like Stefan Johansson. And again, as you point out, it's not exactly as if we're buying, say, a Darren Fletcher or a super proven Champions League midfielder. So again, are we just kind of swapping one unproven midfielder for another. No, that kind of idea. So people don't actually get a chance. It's just a case of, but you've had 18 months, no thanks, out you go, right, next. 18 months later, it's going to be the same again.
I think it's a tough one because the market that we're in, we can't go out, as you say there, and spend £12 million or £15 million on a, the full article. So you also can't play 20 players at any one time. So for these guys to get consistent game time, it's almost impossible. And I think that's where Rogic has not had an opportunity to flourish, because he's come in and maybe played half a game or 15 minutes every 4 weeks or 6 weeks. And I think for a young player, especially a young player coming from a totally different environment, that's really tough. I just wish the boy had a chance. And you're right what you said, that Lennon's obviously seen him on the coaching, on the practice pitch for months. But I just don't think the boy's had a chance yet. And I'm quite happy he's away to Australia to play for a few months. And I'm hoping to get away for 6 months he can come back again and hopefully have a fresh start.
I don't remember you saying that about Mo Bangura, to be honest, but that's another discussion. But
but I actually had seen Mo Bangura's first game, and I thought my first touch was better than his. And as soon as you see a player who constantly is having to go for a tackle for the second touch, at that point you think the guy's a player, he's not a player, and he just didn't have it.
Yeah.
Do you know, we've a few players that have to go for a tackle with their second touch. And it reminds me that a boy at our work, when he was young, from Bolton, when he was young, he ended up with PSV Eindhoven. They went over there at the same time as Romario was playing, when he was on their books. And at training, what they used to do was put, the hula hoops. Used to put one of them around them and then fire a ball at them. No, not the Kris. You want to get... This is going to take a while, isn't it? The ones that you put round your waist and dance with. And they would put one at your feet. You'd stand in the middle.
He dance.
That Romario, what's he like? You can take the boy out of Brazil.
So they would fire a ball at you. If you collected the ball and it went outside the hoop, you had to do 15 press-ups or whatever. And that was how the Dutch players learned to control the ball. Which, just little things like that would maybe add something to the training, because an awful lot of our players seem to have trouble with that. Sorry, I just thought I'd interject with that wee story.
Just imagine Lennon and Gary Parker and Yalby tomorrow at training. If they hear this podcast, right, Johan, do you hear those bomb-pots talking away? Let's get the hula hoops out on the pitch. And the only problem I have with that, Ralph, is unfortunately I can see your players doing a lot of press-ups and becoming more bodybuilders rather than improving their technique.
I was going to say the opposite. I could just imagine Chris Commons going, hula hoops, we'll get hula hoops. I'm starving, and suddenly his weight loss goes out the window.
Chris Boyd's ears would have pricked up at that, but that was Monster Munch he used to like, wasn't it? Chris, a different confectionery.
Chris Boyd, I don't know if you'd have heard it, Ralph, but you might have caught it on coming home from work. For the last 3 weeks or whatever, there seemed to be a regular phone-in to Radio Clyde trying to state the case for Chris Boyd to be signed by Celtic. I don't know if his agents try to get him a deal somewhere or whatever, but it was unbelievable that people who would phone up and then Gordon Diel would be like, well, I have to say, for me, still the best finisher in Scotland. He'd be my first team choice every week, etc. And you're this Jim Delahunt, you could almost imagine him hitting his head off the desk and asking, how is this getting through every night? People asking Chris Boyd for Rangers, what do you think, panel? And they had the cheek to actually broadcast it. Unbelievable. Do you think he could do a job, Ralph?
Yeah, but I think we've already got a cleaner, haven't we?
Well, then, I mean, again, but we've not got that striker yet, and unless Ray Miller can come up with some exciting stories. So far, all we've seemed to be interesting is yet another midfielder, which always seems to be the case. You know what I mean?
No, I think we'll pass on Chris Boyd.
I think Boyd would score a bundle in the SPL, but the thing is, we don't really need a player for the SPL. Why waste money when we need to focus on the Champions League qualifiers? But seeing back to the Rogic point, just thinking about it a bit more there, if you look at guys like Kelvin Wilson and Mikael Lustig and even Sammi, it took these guys, Wanyama, best part of a season, but they were getting regular football. And Rogic hasn't had an opportunity to play regular football. So I would like to see the boy come back. Hopefully, goes away, gets his confidence up, has a good World Cup playing at the highest level, comes back and is given a run of games. Give him half a dozen games in the SPL, and then let's see how it goes.
Yeah. I mean, that's
how Steen and Fallon used to do it. They would bring somebody in, play them for half a dozen games, and then take them out again for 3 or 4, and then bring them in for a run. Instead of doing what we do, which is bring them on for the last 10 minutes, we've no idea if Amido Baldi's any good because we don't get to see enough of them.
Well, I watched him in Turkey. I watched him in Turkey the other week. It was on, I think it was Premier Sports, and he was terrific. You know, he was absolutely terrific.
Beg your pardon?
No, I just moved the chair there. That's all.
Are you up and down the docks again, Hector?
Aye, I might be. I just moved the chair. The dog ran out there, so I'm just moving it.
No. Again, could there be an argument in the fact that we always slag Alan McCoy and the fact that he buys these SPL players for the 4th and 3rd tier divisions to win these titles and play against part-time opposition, and it doesn't give the kids a chance. Whereby the Celtic really give the kids a chance. Rob. Well, Hector,
we should be giving kids a chance. It's that argument. That argument again. Dundee United's kids are getting all the praise. The youngsters everywhere else are getting the praise, and yet we had a team that was winning everything in sight at that level. But none of the players are getting a chance to prove themselves at a higher level with our club. Instead of bringing these foreigners in at the risk of sounding like a Daily Mail editorial, then we should be giving time out to players like Henderson and is it McGregor that's went to Notts County? He should have been given.
I don't mind what nationality they are, as long as they're your youngsters.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
The same as attitude. He's obviously got talent, he's obviously got capability, but he's not getting a shot at it. You could actually say that about Baldy as well. For the last 3 months of the season, I would like to see a few more of our youngsters getting a run. And maybe getting a couple. Look at Darnell Fisher. If it wasn't for the fact that Lustig was ahead of him, he'd have made that spot his own at right back. Yeah, he's not getting half the praise that the Ryan Golds, etc. are getting.
Yeah. I saw Hector, Mark Wilson signed a new deal with Dundee United for 18 months, which I thought was a very good move from Jackie McNamara, who I'm not his biggest fan, but I thought that was quite a good move for someone with his experience, having played with somebody at Celtic, being back at Dundee United and kind of looking after their kids. I thought that was a good touch.
It's always good to have 1 or 2 experienced players with the youngsters, but just on your point, going back to the recent 2 games in Turkey, the game was the final against Galatasaray when I think we had about 6 under-21 players playing. The whole back 4, the whole defence, the boy Henderson, in midfield, and Forrest, who was actually the captain, James Forrest, that game. But they were outstanding in a hostile atmosphere against a really good team, far better than they'll ever face in the SPFL. So if they can do it there and do it in Dublin against Liverpool, give the boys a chance in the SPL, especially with no real competition right now. That's where we should take advantage of the situation and play these kids.
Yeah, but again, it's like I was going to say, hope you would really hope so, and then I was worrying maybe if something like a Turkey tournament is just paying lip service to these young guys and keeping them hanging on. But is it a case of Celtic so desperately need? Is Celtic's situation basically the same as Rangers? Rangers can't risk no getting promotion, so they have to. So Ali believes, and I'm not defending him, I'm just saying I believe this is his attitude. He can't risk no getting promotion, so he plays and pays for these big stars to play against part-time opposition, etc. And I think is Celtic in the same quandary, is Neil Lennon in the same quandary in the fact that he can't work on a project, say, for 2 years or 3 years, even 18 months. Every one of his projects has to be 9 months to ensure that Celtic are ready to be in those Champions League qualifiers every year and ready to compete and qualify. I.e., you can't play 3 youngsters and then hopefully they can come on for a season and then they'll be ready the next season. It's a case of, well, we'd like to, but we've not really got the time at the moment.
I think they're very different circumstances. I think McCoy is up against, as you say, guys who train twice a week in the evening. So these guys only just 50% football. These guys are probably training 4 hours a week.
Aye, but is the principle the same? We cannot risk it.
Well, he can't, but I think he can risk it. In fact, I'm amazed that it's not even a risk. When you talk about risk, it's the lowest risk you'll ever get in football terms. All he needs is 4 or 5 experienced players, and the rest would be either guys through their youth system or guys who are the best players in the lower leagues, to bring them through. And then when you get towards the SPFL, you've hopefully unearthed 2 or 3 wee diamonds, saved yourself a fortune, and also actually saved a few quid to then invest in the top league. I think Celtic is very different. That Lennon and the clubs pushes the Champions League. That's where they make the money, as we all know. So he's got his aspirations to get there, get the money in, and invest year in, year out. But I think where he's failing, in my honest assessment, is that in the SPFL, this is the chance of a lifetime to give kids. I'm not saying play 5 every game. I'm maybe saying play 1 for 3 games. Who's very good like Henderson or Attitudes? Give them 3 games in the trot. Because the league will be won. What's the worst that can happen? We lose 1 game, we lose 2 games, we draw 7 games. That would still scoosh the league. So I just think Lennon's missing a big opportunity. Albeit, I'm hoping that once the league's tied up pretty soon, he then uses the last 6-8 weeks of the season to give these guys plenty of game time. Whether he does it or not, I wouldn't put money on it.
That would be a good idea, I suppose. He should be doing it, and I think after the league's won, it'll take the pressure off them. It'll allow them to develop a wee bit with 4 or 5 experienced players there guiding them through. That's how it used to be in the old days when you couldn't go out and spend a fortune, and you would get the experienced players looking after the younger players and developing their own replacements, as opposed to going out and onto the shopping and bringing somebody in and hoping they make it. Remember, when he's bringing these kids through, they've been watching them for years and years. They know exactly what their mentality is. They know what their attitude towards the club is, etc. And they do deserve a chance against somebody, to use Rogic as an example, somebody that's come in from halfway around the world and just hoping that he makes it, hoping that he fits in with the people around him. I think, as well as that, if they're worried about attendances, which I believe they are, a chance to play these kids would get people coming along just to purely see them. Just to see something different, to see how they do react. It would give a wee bit more interest towards the run-in, as it were, or even the bit after the run-in when they've won the league. So yeah, I'd agree 100% with that. Get the boys playing.
Okay.
Just a final point, Desi, on that. My fear though is I don't think Neil Lennon will do it, because I keep hearing almost on a weekly basis now that undefeated. And I think he's set a target to his team. I want to go down in history as I'd imagine, certainly the first in recent times, to be undefeated. And for me, that's frustrating because, I'd love to be undefeated, but I think you could do it and bring through 1 or 2 of the youth players, the kids with you. It shouldn't be a priority for us. The priority should be giving these guys game time to hopefully unearth 1 or 2 good players and build for the future. Well, I just don't think he'll do it.
No, well, I think you've saved me. You've saved me having to produce a link for the next stage, because that's what we're kind of moving on to. But I think, like, this touching on what you were saying there, when the league's won, then we can relax and maybe play these kids, which I also think is a bit of a double-edged sword, because they're not having to face the same pressure which they would be, say, like in a game where the league is still hasn't been wrapped up. So it's a kind of, I think it's a bit of a false impression that we're, again, we're just kind of saying, oh, on you go and have a wee kick about, lads, that's fine. Thanks for keeping the bench warm, kind of thing. And I know it's obviously it's a tough balance, but again, I'm like you, Hector. I don't have the confidence that we're going to start to see a new name suddenly be on people's lips before the end of this season. I don't think anyone's going to say, "Oh, that young boy done well," or "They should play him for the start next season." I don't think that's going to happen, sadly, unless it's, say, somebody like Stefan Johansson, who obviously has been brought in as a kind of straight into the first team player. And again, like somebody like Rogic, I was just thinking, you've got Celtic going by people like Beaton. So again, what's that telling him? Like Charlie Mulgrew is like a utility guy, but it's the first start every week. Then you've got Beaton coming in and getting praised to high heaven. So again, Rogic's confidence must be like Sammi's at times. It must have been right into the ground.
I would say Beaton though is very different player from Rogic in terms of Beaton's like in the Wanyama area. He's a defensive protecting midfielder, whereas I think Rogic is more a central stroke attacking midfielder. So I get your point, but I think they would be slightly different. But Johansson's interesting. I think he's more a natural mid going forward. So that is certainly in the Rogic space. So yeah, the young guy's head must be down, but here's hoping he can come back after.
Well, again, Johansson a pointer that maybe Joe Ledley, who is another I don't think is going to sign a contract, purely because he will be in demand, and it's a young man's prerogative to look after his family. So I wouldn't have any problem with Joe Ledley moving on if he get a good deal elsewhere. But do you think this is a sign of things to come? I know the politics in the papers always portray it as we're having talks, and they've been positive. That great misnomer, there's positive talks with the agent. But do you think he'll be here come the end of the January window, Hector?
With Ledley, I don't know. I really don't know. Part of me, I swither. I think week to week, I think he's going to stay. Then I don't. I think he's got his partner. They're really settled here. He's very close with Matthews and Commons.
Yep.
And obviously that'll sway a big part of it. I think Sammi will go. But in terms of Ledley and Sammi, what annoys me is that if these guys don't sign a contract last summer, then we should sell them. Why wait so long and potentially not get a transfer fee? So either the club haven't made them an offer last summer, which is the club's fault then, or if we have made them an offer, why not say, right, you've got until say middle of August to accept it, and if you don't, we're going to sell you in the next 2 weeks. I just don't get that strategy. We're losing millions. What you talk about Ledley, easily £3 million, £4 million from the EPL club under contract, and Sammy's probably the same. So you're talking arguably between £5 and £8 million we're possibly thrown away here, and I just don't can't get my head around that.
So
throwing it away is maybe right, but we didn't pay anything for Ledley, and we did give him a 4-year contract, and it's entirely up to Ledley himself. But if he came for nothing, and he plays for the 4 years that he said he would, and then he goes away at the end for nothing, he's done nothing wrong, and the club can't really do anything about it.
I'm not blaming Ledley, just so we're clear. No, I'm not blaming Ledley or Samaras here. I'm saying the club's strategy, I would have thought, would be, well, hold on a minute, why take the risk that we let a player negotiate a contract with us in the final transfer window before they're out of contract? Why not do it the previous summer, then say, right guys, here's the ultimatum. You want to stay with us for 3 years, or we're going to sell you? And I just don't know why we don't do that.
Certainly if we paid a transfer fee for them, yeah.
If
you don't want to shell out.
No, but why should it matter? Surely that's us. But that's us taking advantage of the Bosman market, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. But we're not losing anything. So we've got them for 4 years, and we use them for the 4 years we've got them. The big comparison, of course, is Henrik Larsson when he left. But he did say that this is the last contract I'm signing. I'll stay till the end. Why didn't we force him to go a year earlier?
But he was the exception, wasn't he? He's a once-in-a-lifetime exception to the rule. I mean, a guy like him, there's nobody we've got right now that's anywhere near him.
Well,
sorry.
That was going to be my point. Playing devil's advocate, would Sammi and Ledley be missed?
Based on this season's performance, no.
No, I have a lot of time for Ledley. I think he's a great player. I don't think we've had the best out of him that he's got to offer. So I would like to see him stay, because I think potentially he's up there with John Collins in that sort of position, to my mind. He's as good a player as around, really, in our market for the position that he occupies. And alongside Brown, that's the strongest we've got in the middle of the park. Where Johansson, Beaton, Kaya, where the rest of them all fit in, and Mulgrew as well, I think we've maybe overkilled a wee bit in that position in the middle, especially on the left-hand side.
Just to quickly skip back a bit, I was just going to bring up Stevie May to you, Ralph, because I know you've been a big fan of his in the diary, but there's been quite a few Celtic linked with very young kids this week. And again, like this, touching on what we've already been talking about there, as in kids not getting a chance, it seems a bit strange that we constantly see these stories about Celtic being linked with this wonder kid from Sweden here, and this, I think it's the latest one, some kid via the Congo in Sweden or whatever, being rumoured with Celtic. And it's I'm wondering, have the club actually got their priorities right? Are they so focused on what's coming along the line in 10 years that they're kind of missing what's, like, as you say, Hector, they're kind of forgetting about the following year when their actual stars are out of contract. Instead of making sure those T's are crossed and those I's are dotted before worrying about the kind of youths of tomorrow. Maybe their kind of priorities are in the right place.
I think you're allowed to have more than one priority, and I think they should have the two. They should have the future and have a good scouting network that can try and get the young players before they're snapped up and become too expensive for us. So I fully support that. But I think what Lennon's hitting at, and even you mentioned Chris Commons at the start when he's come out and said, look, we need some quality in for the Champions League qualifiers next year, is that you can do both. And now that the club's generated a lot of money over the last 2 seasons, both in the Champions League and be selling Wanyama and Hooper and these players, then you can bring in 1 or 2 bits of quality and hopefully bring in through 1 or 2 diamonds over the next 3, 4, 5 years. So I think you can do both.
Ralph, do you think if you were in front of Peter Lawwell at the moment, he would be sitting telling you we're minted, or do you think he'd be telling you you're skint or skint?
Oh, I think he'd be telling us that we're probably in the best position we've ever been. But it's what you do with that money when you've got it, really. That's the key. There's no point in sitting on it. There's the old phrase of speculating to accumulate. And if we want to move to the next level, which is regular, last 16, last 8, maybe even last 4, if we want to be a big club on the park as well as off it, then we need to invest in the playing side, like you say, from now and not for a few years down the line. Although, like I say, there's no reason why we can't do both. But some money needs to be spent on getting us back to being a big club on the park. Big clubs on the park don't sell their best players every year.
Well, that brings us nicely to the unbeaten run, Hector. How are you finding it? Are you wrapped up in the euphoria of it yet, or is it much of a muchness given the so-called lack of competition as we're being told every day in every media publication?
I'm not wrapped up in it. But don't get me wrong, I'd love to see Celtic go the whole season unbeaten. But as I mentioned earlier, I wouldn't put that as a priority. I would look upon winning the league, but without having Rangers or a club of that like to challenge us, it's an ideal chance to unearth or certainly blood a few younger players. But long may it continue, but hopefully it continues with 1 or 2 young players also playing more regular football.
And Ralph, you're a regular at Celtic Park. How has it been really? How have you been finding it? Again, are people... does it even get mentioned, this unbeaten run, or is it this something that Neil Lennon seems to be mentioning quite a lot now? That's a goal for the team. I mean, I'm wondering, are they kind of running it? They kind of clutching at straws now, saying, okay, this is a goal. Let's get this into the mindset, or is it this a case of it's just another thing that they're using to speak about in press conferences? It doesn't really matter that much.
I think it matters. It would be great to be able to say that year we went through completely unbeaten. I think the closest we came to it was back when I think we lost 1 game under Tommy Burns and still didn't win the league.
That's a good point. Does it matter then?
No, I don't think it matters with regard to trophies and things like that. But it's certainly, well, you don't go to the football to watch your team get beat. So every season you start off, you want to win every game. You certainly don't, you don't want to get beat. And anybody that went through the 90s, when we used to be called Celtic Nil, then you relish and you remember every game, you remember every result. And don't kid yourself, these teams would love to be the one to beat us. Terry Butcher was talking about it in the paper.
Carry on.
He called it a free shot, with breaking the record. There's no pressure on them. And gradually you'll see, and it's happened a lot this season, you'll see these teams raising the level a wee bit to try and be that team to beat us. And we will have to correspondingly raise our level as well. We can't take our foot off the gas. It'd be brilliant to go through it and win every game or 2, not get beaten. But it's not a big thing. It's not a priority, I don't think. And you might be right. Maybe that is the marketing strategy for the rest of the season. I think even Lowell himself would admit that we were dying in the... Lovell.
They 2 guys. Aye.
He needs to change. I tell you what, I wish the Kellys were back sometimes. I can pronounce him. I think even he would admit we were dire in the games in the run-up to Motherwell. But the Motherwell game seemed to be a lot better. There seemed to be a bigger crowd there. Maybe it was because there was public transport and things like that available. And we should be pushing this idea of, I think we should push the idea of going unbeaten, and we should certainly be marketing the 10 in a row thing, and we should be pushing heavily for that, because each one, you only need to lose one, we've got to start all over again. And I want to, when I come onto this earth, we were just starting the first 9 in a row, and I would like to be, when I'm getting older, and after 10, what will I be, near 60? Bloody hell. I think if I'm to depart this earth, I would like to have seen 10 done.
And it's, as you mentioned, it's Terry Butcher and Hibs this weekend. Hector, will you be watching that? Will you be going, or will you just watch it on the TV?
I'll watch it on the box on Sunday. So I think Butcher always gets his players, fired up for a game against Celtic, and Inverness, I think, had a reasonable record. Even if we beat them, they always kind of gave us a game most times. But I think, what Ralph was saying there, I agree with him. I think Butcher's right, come on, this is your chance to have a go at them and everything else. So I'm expecting a tough game there, but if we play the way we can play, we should win with a couple of goals at least.
And who would you put for your first goal scorer?
It's a tough one, isn't it? It's a really tough one.
If only we had an
Pookie.
Again, as his chance went, there was talk about him maybe going on loan already. I thought, again, he's a guy that actually did get a chance, to be honest, under Neil Lennon. He did get a run of games, to be fair to Lennon.
You don't think there's some players, it's a cultural thing, isn't it? But I mentioned a wee while back about even the likes of Kelvin Wilson. I mean, it was just from down south from England. He came up the road, and Victor and Lustig. It can take guys a year to just adapt to that, especially guys who English isn't their natural language, to adapt. So I'm more patient the older I get. I think when I was younger, I used to judge a player after their first match, like I did with Mo Bangura.
You're the sort of guy that used to only wait 2 dances in the Savoy before trying to fire in.
What's wrong with
that? Henry Camara, it took about 15 minutes, I think, before I'd made my mind up on him.
I tell you what, no faster last.
See if Pookie gets to play in the next call. How long's Anthony Stokes out for now? 2 games, is it? 1 game, 2 games?
Oh, 2, I think, for the sending off.
It was Keith Lasley, so it should actually be none.
Yeah, it should have got a pay rise and a wee medal. Pookie will not have Stokes next to him for the next couple of games if he plays. And what I've noticed when I've been sitting in the stand is that Stokes is always telling Pookie what to do. He's always pointing for him to run here or to move there or whatever. And if you look at the game over in Turkey when Baldy and Pookie started, they played very well together. The first one. They both scored and they both looked like they could play a bit. And I would like to see those two playing up front and see how they get on together without Stokes telling them what to do. If you look at any videos, if you can get a chance to look at it. Because that's what he's doing all the time. And I think Pookie, being the new boy, is doing as he's told. And I think maybe we could let him off the leash a wee bit and let him play a wee bit freer without Stokes around him. Just something I've noticed. No,
that's a very good point. And again, as Hector said earlier, maybe it's a case of to get the league wrapped up. Maybe there will be a bit of pressure off the guys who are feeling a wee bit under the cosh, and that's just what they need. A few games, get a few goals, get a few decent touches, get some fans on side also, which can also be the make or break for some players, let's be honest. So that'll be interesting. Hibs, hopefully there'll be another victory on the run. I think it'll be quite interesting, this whole unbeaten run, in respect to the marketing at Celtic, the whole merchandise sales, etc. I could imagine there's somebody sitting in the PR. I believe, Ralph, is it true we've got a PR department?
I'm led to believe that. I was very surprised to find out there is a PR man. Yeah, because
when did you find that out?
It's shocking. Somebody told me.
On the grapevine. I could imagine they're sitting kind of going, right, okay, Champions League's been a disaster. Right, what can we sell this year? There must be something we can punt, and suddenly this. What can we put in the Christmas DVDs, etc. And suddenly this run appears. What?
I would like to see them sell and celebrate, 20 years next month, is it, the opening of the new ground?
Yep.
March 94? So yeah, 2 months away, sorry, it's only January. I think they should celebrate that and get old Fergus McCann back over.
Wow.
Get him to wave to us and give us a chance to make up for that booing after Janssen left.
Would you think he should come and lift
20 years down the line.
The league flag?
Yeah, well, he can't lift his league flag. Mind you, he might be able to lift the league flag in March.
No, you know what I mean. But you know what I mean, as in, should we not get him back for that, or is that a case of this for the anniversary? Do you think they should get him back?
Just for the anniversary, just to a big thank you. 20 years down the line, this is what you saw, and this is what you've done.
Would you pay his expenses, or would you expect him to pay that out of his own £40 million profit?
I suppose we'd have to go and pick him up, wouldn't we? Cut down on the expenses.
Would it be in one of his luxury buses?
Yeah, the Tarrier carrier, yeah.
I can see that. Well, we could send Bedford Falls. He's from Croy. Probably stays in the same village. I mean,
you can give a coke. You can give a coaxie, can't you?
He'd probably jump my back, Fergus. I'll run you down. I'm only doing 74 miles this weekend.
I was going to say about Fergus though. I think the club might actually struggle to get him over because he's such a busy man. I'm led to believe, and he's so busy unofficially doing a lot of work for Blue Pitch and Margarita Holdings and then the background.
the second part of his plan.
You've never seen Craig White and Fergus McCann in the same place at the same time, have you? You could run it something here, Hector. Charles.
It's always been, yeah.
It's always
been said. It's always been said that if Craig White pulled his mask off, it'd be Fergus McCann there, wouldn't it?
Could you honestly imagine if it was like times were twisted and Fergus McCann had to walk into a meeting of the SFA or the SPL or whatever, and Charles Green was standing there representing Rangers? Can you imagine what would be going through Fergus McCann's mind? It'd be quite surreal, I think. The amount of work he did for Celtic compared to the amount of shambolic work. Again, the brilliant work Charles did as he intended to do. I think Charles' project would be marked as big a success in his eyes as Fergus was in his eyes, to be honest.
I think Fergus would shake his hand and say, "Well done."
Well done, brother.
Should we name a strand after Charles Green, do you think? We could call it the Green and White strand.
Toilets. The new toilets you keep harping on about, they could be after Charles Green.
The Charles Green lavatory.
Yeah.
It's got a certain ring to it, hasn't it?
Oh, lovely. What a lovely image. That kind of brings us. So we've got Hibs, we've got unbeaten run, we've got Hibs. We've touched on that. That's very good. Before we come to the Twitter bag, Hector, I think we should. People do complain that we talk about Sevco too much, but I think it's worth discussing what's been happening over the New Year period over by, and Ralph, obviously you covered it in the diary every day. Rangers, 15% pay cuts, draconian changes across the board, etc. Poor Ali McCoist. Have you felt any more sorry for Ali McCoist this week, Hector? And the fact that this guy getting beleaguered abuse from the media for a change?
Well, I think as a rookie manager, he needs more time, to put his stamp on the team.
And some money as well.
Well, listen, I also think he's underpaid. I think what he's going through, he merits a significant pay rise. I would also suggest that when it comes to shares in the club, I understand that obviously they could give him free shares, but I'd expect them to give maybe 1 pence shares just as a token of their appreciation to him. Maybe $1 million or so of them. Would be quite nice.
Even if he put in £10,000, which is maybe about 2 days maybe work, I think it is. If he was willing to contribute 2 days, I reckon it'd be fair enough for Charles Green to give him £1 million worth of shares. As long as they back the season book campaign, that would be a nice exchange, wouldn't it?
Absolutely, and I think Ali will go down in football history as really one of the legends, both as a player, but more importantly as a manager. I think winning 2 trophies, 2 championships in 2 seasons is a great achievement, especially 2 different leagues. It's easy for Lennon to win 3 leagues in a row, but that's the same league. Ali's had to go through 2 different divisions, which I think nowadays is tough.
And those Carnoustie hotels, they're not comfortable. Those 4-star hotels during the week, they are not comfortable. Those spas do not give you 2 bath towels. They only give you 1 bath towel. It's a disgrace.
It is a disgrace. It is a disgrace. And not only that, I think Ali made a very valid point. He goes, when questioned about it, he goes, well, anyway, the Forfar players were out having lunch. So he's every right to...
Forfar players are having lunch?
They were having lunch. Although what Ali admitted to say was they were at the chippy having their lunch before the game.
Friday between them.
having a bag of chips between them.
But Ralph, can I just come to you, because I think there's a lot of abuse for poor Ali, right, in regards to the fact that he spent money on 9 players last season. But this poor guy, right, poor Ali McCoist, this poor guy is having to sit and write on the back of fag packets because Rangers can't even afford stationery. What sort of environment is that for a budding young manager? The guy, he's a rookie manager that's starting out, a young man. He's got his best years ahead of him, a good 50 years managing Rangers, and he's having to write things in the back of a fag packet apparently. What do you think of that, Ralph?
Do you know, he's making do against some terrible, terrible circumstances. None of his own making.
Sorry, I wish I had like the old wartime music to play in the back.
By the way, can I just
you carry on and mean Hector will hum.
No, sorry.
Because everything's against him. People hate him just for who he is, and he's not. He's a lovely guy. He's a family man. He loves his club. He looks after his players. He makes sure they want for nothing, because that's his job. He's stepped up and taken responsibility for things that have happened to that club that were nothing to do with him, and he's put his shoulder to the wheel and he's making it turn for them. I think he's a fantastic guy. And do you know what? If anything happens to David Moyes at Manchester United, don't you be surprised to see McCoist being offered the job. And don't you also be surprised to see him turning it down, because he's a Rangers man through and through. He'd do that job for nothing if he could. He doesn't want that money, you know. They've made him do it. It's union rules. He has to be paid.
Has he actually?
But he wouldn't. I bet you he's not even cashed your checks.
Has he signed a contract to reduce the wages?
Do you know what? I'll bet he's just said to them, "Look, pay me what you think I'm worth."
Because
he's probably not even looked. You know, all this criticism, he probably doesn't even know how much he's getting paid.
There was a scandalous document. It must be a fake, because it was one of the most detailed fakes I've ever saw, to be honest. But I don't know if you mentioned it in the diary about how Ali had actually asked for his wages to be shown as only 25% of their true value, and also so the fans would think he was only on £200,000 a year, but he was going to get that money back in bonuses, so it wasn't classed as official wage. And I'm thinking, what sort of people are out there making up documents like that which name McCoist and his lawyers and the people who are in charge of the money at Rangers? These poor people must be raging. I bet you it's good through the courts right now. I bet you they're ranting and raving at the civil court right now, making sure these people are prosecuted, because that thing cannot happen.
I'm delighted.
I only put it in the diary so people could see what he's up against.
Yep.
Because it's easy for us as Celtic fans to believe some of this nonsense, but by putting it out there to Celtic supporters, they can realise just what that man has to put up with. Do you know he can't even go out and hire a gardener anymore?
It's an uphill struggle for the guard to get a gardener these days. But also that piece of that document even alleged sums as little as £62,000. He was like fiddling here and there to make sure that he didn't lose a penny. And we all know Ali McCoist couldn't care less about the cash at Rangers, because as he said, he does all his calculations on the back of a fag packet. So it wouldn't be of interest to him $62,500 or $825,000 or £1 million in shares, so he would bat the Charles Green season book money. That's a lot of nonsense. It's unbelievable the lengths people will go to incriminate Ali McCoist when the guy is obviously doing all he can to make the world a better place.
I'm sure that it'll just make him more determined to succeed, and he'll keep doing what he thinks is right for that club, and gradually he'll bring them back to the level they deserve to be at.
Hector, can I just ask you a question? Have you noticed that Ralph occasionally lapses into a voice that sounds remarkably like Stuart McCall's.
Interesting. Interesting.
It's only when he talks about Rangers, but he starts to sound like, yes.
You have to stand up. What's his name? Was it Nelson that put his arm underneath his other arm?
Mandela? Or let's not go there, because Andy from Scott's scene might be listening and he'll get upset again.
Just one thing on Ali. Just final point for me. I was actually delighted for Ali today when I read the news and heard that Dave King, Dave King, who's the South African billionaire businessman, who's never done one thing wrong ever.
Yep.
He's clean as can be. Dave King came out and said,
was it 143 or 43 guilty charges?
False allegations.
No, I think he just pled guilty to save the court time and money because he's that nice a guy.
And Sevco's reputation.
Yep.
That's why he did it. But I was delighted when Dave King came out and said, look, Ali needs not to cut, but to get more players in, spend more money, and give Ali as much support as we can. Dave King, you're the man. You are the man. Get in there, Dave. Give Ali support.
I'll tell you, I see loads of praise for Dave King in the press, but the one thing they don't pick up on, and it should be praised more, is his consistency. Because when he was at Rangers the first time, it was all for Rangers spending money that weren't theirs. And there he is again, telling Ali, get in there and spend that money. I mean, so Dave King, Mr. Consistency.
Did you see as well in that article that he said we need to get another share issue so we can buy the club? So there you have the plans that, what do they call them, the rebels?
The requisitioners are us.
The requisitioners. Right, that's their plan. You watch. They'll form a wee company. They'll get them to buy shares, and they'll use that money, because they'll not spend their own. That's obvious. They've had plenty of opportunities to do that. They'll use that money to buy it back off the Spivs. That's if the Spivs haven't completely burnt the place to the ground by then.
Okay,
that's his plan. That's his plan.
So sorry, Ralph. So have you managed to vent your anger then? Because you were really angry at the press for daring to have a go at Ali this week. Are you over it now?
I think so. I think that, well, Tom English has left, and good luck to him in whatever job he decides to do.
So the Irishman Tom English has left the Scotsman?
That's the one. He's away now. I don't know if he's been offered a job at Rangers.
He denied it on Twitter tonight. He denied it. He said he would not work for less than 825 grand.
Who gets paid that amount?
They've suffered. The press have turned on them. It's not nice. I think they should be left alone to get on with their job in peace and quiet, and to get Rangers to exactly where they deserve to be.
Excellent. Okay, well, we'll finish tonight when we get there with a song dedicated to brave Ali. I was going to say Sir Ali, but no doubt it will become a Sir Ali when the time comes, but we'll leave that for now. Hector, let's go on to the Twitter bag.
Can I suggest one thing? Just before the Twitter bag, sorry, I took a wee note just as a prompt here for this. It was actually just regarding the unfortunate news that Bobby Collins passed away just last week. So yesterday's Evening Times did a very good article from, of all people, Matthew Lindsay, so fair play to him. And it really was a timeline of Bobby's career at Celtic, and some kind of wee anecdotes and stories from Bobby as well. So if you don't mind, maybe for the next minute or so, just a couple of things about Bobby. So
thank you.
So for the younger generation, and that includes us, Bobby signed for Celtic. I think it was way back in the 50s. And he was nicknamed the Wee Barra due to his stature. I think he was 5'3" tall, a local Glasgow guy. Grew up a Celtic supporter. His dad was a Celtic fan. It was interesting, his mother was a Protestant. He actually talks about in the article. So he went to a non-Catholic school, or as we used to call it, a Proddy school in Glasgow. He was talking about his career, and his first game was against Rangers, and what at the time was a Rangers legend called Tiger Shaw. And I love it when he says he was preparing for the first game, and he said that he was up against Tiger Shaw, and I thought, right, he's an old so-and-so, I'm going to run him into the ground. That's a typical Glasgow guy. It's the first game. He had a great game and Celtic won. But he was there for 9 years. Talks about his time at Celtic. He goes, Celtic at the time had Willie Fernie and Jock Stein was a player. And he goes, but Celtic had more Protestants than Catholics in the team at the time. And he goes, well, Rangers, of course, had a different attitude for many, many years. I think that says a lot. He then goes on to talk about Jock being a great pal of his, Jock Stein, incredible manager. Said he was a terrific player in terms of being a leader. So, Desi, you were right when it came to your earlier chat we had about managers and being a good Celtic team.
You're forgiven.
He speaks well about Sean Fallon. Said he's a terrific guy. Who, it won't surprise Andy to know who's read his book, which is we all recommend here, was as tough a tackler in the game of football as he's ever seen. Mentions old firm games, playing for Celtic, blah blah blah. His best friend was old Rangers legend, a guy called George Young, who even my dad spoke about. Apparently was a tremendous centre half. He mentions the 1957 League Cup final, Old Hampden in the Sun, Celtic 7, Rangers 1. And he says that, and they were lucky it was only 7-1, as I hit the crossbar twice. So I think that tells its own story. Yeah, just moving on. What was quite fascinating here is he actually mentions Celtic winning the league. They won it once in the 50s. And he says here that, although we won it, Celtic weren't allowed to represent Scotland in the European Cup. He says the Hibs chairman at the time was also on the SFA committee, and they were put forward to play in it instead of Celtic, and they got to the semi-finals. So maybe we want to double check that and see if that's correct. But
there is some truth in that. I've heard that before, yeah.
I'd never heard that, but that was fascinating. He said he left Celtic after 9 years, and the reason was simple. Celtic wanted rid of me. They wanted the money. He said, I didn't want to move, but that's what they did, so it won't surprise most of us who grew up to the lean years at Celtic. But I wanted to finish a wee funny one. He came back to Scotland, and he said that he played for Morton, and his final game for Morton was at Ibrox. And he said Morton beat Rangers 2-0. But what he remembers about the game is that he scored the second goal, and he can remember what happened. He goes, the right back had the ball, and he heard Willie Waddle, the Rangers manager, shouting at him, don't pass it back, don't pass it back. The player didn't hear the instructions, passed it back, and he said, Bobby got the ball, took it around the keeper, and rather than just tap it in the net, he went, what the hell, and smashed it into the net in front of the Rangers fans. So, Bobby Collins, the wee barra, rest in peace from all of us at Etims.
Yep, well done. Can only apologise. Ralph, was that your dog snoring there? That noise? What was it? Was you, Hector? Certainly some. Either your wife or your dog snoring. There was something going on. And who was snapping their fingers?
Can I just say, I've also got a rather large dog, and the thing came out here, and my wife.
What's that?
And my wife shut the door and left him here, and the kids are outside the door. They're annoying him, and he's growling at them, and I'm smacking my fingers. Shut up! I was getting shut up. So there you go. I
thought it was Ralph again. Okay, thanks very much for that, Bobby Collins tribute. Was it Spurs Bobby Collins went to?
No, he went to Everton first, and then he went to Leeds United.
Oh, sorry, bring me. Because he does get a mention in the. It does get quite a good mention in the Sean Fallon book, as far as I can remember. But yep, that's true.
There's a friend of ours gets married in Jersey, and she's a big Everton fan, and she's marrying a Liverpool fan. And what they're doing at the reception is they're having tables dedicated to certain players of both teams, like legends of both teams. And they asked me what table I wanted to sit at, and I said the Bobby Collins one, because that's the only player I could think of that's played for Everton and Celtic. That's a wee story with absolutely no point whatsoever.
Oh, that's excellent. Very good. Very good. Who else has played for Everton?
Just Alan Stubbs, isn't there?
No, don't start.
And I didn't quite see that he'd be fitted in. I read Bobby Collins' book about 12 months back, and not only was he great with Celtic, he went. The story is basically he went because the club needed for the money for the floodlights, because they were all burnt out after guiding the German bombers over during the war, and that money was used to put the new floodlights in. And he went down to Everton where he performed magnificently, but it was at Leeds United that he made, I wouldn't say made a name for himself, because he'd already made a name for himself, But he was instrumental in Leeds United coming up from the second division and eventually being the dominant side that they were in the 70s. The Leeds team could almost be an image of Collins himself as a player. They could play football, but they were a hard team as well, and that was exactly how I think Bobby Collins would be remembered. Yep,
yeah, I think that was what was conveyed in the Sean Fallon book. So thanks very much for that, Hector. That was good to pay tribute there. Finally, as normal, we like to finish with the Twitter bag. And Hector, the question you posed to the listeners tonight was:
if you could ask Peter Law one question, what would it be?
Okay, I have Twitter up on screen, so I can assist you tonight. Thankfully, if you want a hand.
Can you go to the top and
Yep.
I'll go to the bottom of the responses? But I would just like to slightly go a different angle here.
Okay.
So we did it when Jeanette Finlay was on. So Ralph, would you mind going Peter Law here, if that's okay? If we could put some questions to you, because you know, who knows, some point in the future you may have an opportunity to sit down with Peter, have a cosy wee chat, a cup of tea and a custard cream. So let's get some practice just in case that event ever happens. How does that sound?
Well, I'll give it a go. I mean,
Right.
I can't possibly hope to read the man's mind, but we'll see.
Right, so Hector, you're basically saying that we're going to pretend to be Ralph sitting in front of Peter?
We'll go Ralph without the Stuart McCall accent.
Okay.
How does that sound?
That sounds good. Right, do you want me to start from the top?
Yeah,
come from
you
the
can
bottom?
start. Well, get out the bottom.
Lovely. Okay, Mr. Lowell. Is it Mr. Lowell or Peter? What would you like to be addressed as? Sir?
Peter.
Okay. Lord the Value Survey. Timaloy70 asks, why did Celtic not vote against Campbell Ogilvie, brackets, heavily conflicted, being reselected as president of the SFA?
Well, I think the SFA ran Scottish football like it was its own little kingdom, you see. And now with the formation of the SPFL, the clubs are more in charge and perhaps more masters of their own destiny. So I think you'll see a bit more of the clubs taking a wee bit more control.
Okay, thanks very much, sir, for that reply.
Okay, Peter, question for you, Peter. This is from a Mr. Brian Damage. And Brian asks, Peter, why is Neil Doncaster still in a job?
Can I refer the caller to my last answer?
Sorry, I fell asleep on his answer.
yeah, Ralph, try and remember, Peter's time is very short. I would imagine if I ever sat in front of Peter Lowell, he would be very abrupt and quick with his answers. He wouldn't just go off and meander. Would you think that would be true, Ralph?
No, I think he'd give a full and correct answer. A full and complete answer, should I say.
Okay, then.
Because he's talking to me, he'd have to explain it slowly, wouldn't he?
Oh, that's a fair point. Okay, here's one for you from Kieran Hatz. Kieran asks Mr. Lowell, why are you not coming across with the money for a decent striker to compete in Europe? What happened to speculate to accumulate?
It's the manager's job to pick the player he wants and tell me what he thinks he's worth. So I'll leave that one. I'll pass that question over to the manager. So next time I'll pretend to be Neil Lennon.
Okay.
Hector.
Next one's from Shep. Woof. Peter, why are you hell-bent on turning us into a soulless club like Hibs?
Hooray!
Do you know, the question is, what do they want Celtic to be? What do supporters actually want? The Irish republicanism is a great thing, and the club has got its roots steeped in that. But every time a banner comes up, £50,000 fine. Every time do you know something? There was a Chinese guy phoned me.
I don't believe that.
After the Wallace Sands banner. And he says to me, I didn't know you were associated with the IRA. There you go. It goes around the world. And Celtic has to have the correct image.
Is this you telling us Celtic are a global brand these days and we should all be proud as consumers?
How can we not be a global brand? With supporters clubs, you can go into a town or a city, anywhere in Britain, there'll be a Celtic supporters club. Any of the 5 continents, there'll be a Celtic supporters association. That's a big difference between Celtic and other clubs, and we need to be promoted.
Peter, just a point of clarity on your answer on that, and thanks for that. I'm sure Shep Woof was very happy. but can you please tell us, what was the Chinese guy's name?
Do you know, I can't remember.
You probably deal with so many people every day, Peter, that one of your minions probably dealt with him and you can't mind. Can I just ask you, Bugsy Malone is asking, can you give him a swatch of your unseen Fenian hand? Now, would you allow that sort of talk?
Else to come. No, because I wouldn't have thought that Fenian was a bad word.
I wouldn't. Again, by the way.
Is this an East End euphemism, Hector? Mad dog growling.
Have I just slipped out of character there?
Sorry, Peter. Sorry, I'll get him to shut up. There we go.
Right, I'll ask another one while I'm here. Tommy Riley 70 asks, Peter, are the club happy with being shafted out of the Champions League football by a corrupt SFA? If so, why?
I think, again, it goes back to that first answer. The SFA used to be the top dogs, now it's the SPFL. And I think things will be different from now on in. But these things take time. Rome wasn't built in a day. But then again, I wasn't on that job.
Peter, one from Michael Cole here, and this is straight to the point. Will we ever play in another league? And if so, where and when?
Well, I think that you can forget the English Premier League. They're in their own little world. They're cash rich. But the league below them, the English First Division as it used to be, the Championship, is it? They need money. They need fresh ideas. They're skint. And I wouldn't be at all surprised to see moves made, not only for Celtic, but for other Scottish clubs, to be involved at that level. I think it'd probably start, actually, with maybe a British League Cup. Perhaps at quarter-final stage, you'd see the two countries mixing. Whether or not that'd be a success, I don't think there'd be any opposition from UEFA. In fact, I think they're for it. But it remains to be seen the best way to go about it. European leagues and that, maybe a wee bit further in the future. But there's definitely scope to increase the wealth of the clubs in the second English tier and the top Scottish tier.
Interesting. Just a few quick ones before I get to the main question. The Black Knight, the TBK, asks, which hand do you use? Which could be connected to quite a few motions.
Which hand do you what?
Which hand do you use? It could be your unseen Fenian hand, or it could be various other things. Like maybe it's for stirring your morning espresso. And John FM15 also.
Which hand do I use? I use my.
John
All right, sorry, that was a different question altogether.
John FM15 basically states, "Gonna no day that," which I quite like. But McClafferty1 asks a very pertinent question. Peter, why did you employ Willie Hawthorne? The man's a clown with a huge chip on his shoulder. He won't be happy till he's got us all banned.
If a supporter has a genuine complaint, then get the evidence, get the numbers, and get it to me, and I'll do something about it.
But do you not think, Peter, having a reverse charge phone number isn't a good start to holding complaints, or an 0845 number for your complaint line? Whose idea is that, Peter?
We've got to make money everywhere we can.
Speculate to accumulate.
Absolutely. You want that striker, but you don't want to pay the money for him. It's got to come from somewhere.
Hector?
Yeah, there's one from Martin McKissick, Peters, and I hope you're sitting down here. And Martin asks, Peter, when will you resign? It doesn't you know, like, whenever I say Peter, he starts to growl for some reason.
Do you know, it's very frustrating. I'm here trying to do the best I can for the club. Like I said before, it's in a healthier financial position than it's ever been. We're competing at Champions League level. We've won the league, and yet people are still mocking. People are still picking. It's very, very frustrating. And sometimes I'm not sure what I have to do to put that right.
Well, let's go on. Mark 11888 also asked when we'll be retiring anytime soon. But I think we're all glad. The same as the way we're all 100% behind Alan McCoist and his financial antics. I think we're all glad that knowing, Peter, that you've got your bonuses deferred, but they're still available for you to pick up, and of course you all still have that protected tax-free pension. So we're all with you. We're all in this together. It's good to know.
With what you've got, I think what I need is a good PR man to get my message across, so that the communication between the support and between the people behind the scenes at Celtic, so that we can have not so much transparency, but so we can understand each other.
But you know,
so we can all work together towards the one goal. We're on the one road, remember.
But Peter, why don't you maybe like get various people, I don't know, like from say social media and all that, they could be sitting about and they could be taking your message to the people and maybe trying in subliminal, unconscious kind of threads to let people know that what you're doing is actually very good, and anybody that speaks up against the board are basically wee Castros out there, just kind of ranting and raving for God only knows what reason, purely personal agendas.
I think egos come into it a lot, don't they? I think some people write diaries every day because they want to be seen.
You're joking. What sort of arsehole would write a diary slagging the board almost every day?
It's shocking. Well, that's not the sort of person I'd have in the room with me. Let's be honest. I think it's all down to pulling together, and it's good to have people around you that tell you maybe when you're doing something wrong. If you don't know when you're doing something wrong, you'll never know when you're doing something right. And I think I would welcome opinions, sensible ones. Not when would you resign. There's no point in getting personal about it. I get mocked enough in the papers. Sometimes it doesn't seem I can do right for doing wrong. And I think we should all pull together and head in the right direction from now on in.
Right, I'm sorry, this to let you break character for a moment, but this will I forget because I didn't want to forget this point. Sorry, Ralph, especially given the magnitude of what I'm about to bring up again. It was the fact of you wanted to mention the Amsterdam issue that you raised in the diary the other week for the regards to Quigley's. I thought you were wanting to maybe mention the fact that the club had responded to that.
Absolutely. It seemed like the Quigleys and maybe the others, I can't speak for the others, it seemed like maybe the Quigleys were feeling that the club weren't doing enough. But I mentioned it in the diary, and I feel a bit of a prat now because they did something that very day. So they were obviously already going to do it. It just... now it makes it sound like I'm moaning at them, so I'm not. No, but they did it. It doesn't matter how it's done; they've done it.
Exactly. All build it ends well. But I did remember that we wanted to just get a wee nod in that direction because we're quick to flag them.
As somebody said in the email, it doesn't. Was it a lassie to a docker? Doesn't matter when you come, you come.
Yep. Hector.
Something like that.
Yep. Sorry. so quickly back to the end of the Twitter bag. We're near the end. Hector.
Well, I'll do one more. Do you want to keep Scots to last?
Well, what one are you? Hold on. Where's Scots to spin? Hold on. No, the one I liked was where is it? Sorry, give me a second. I liked S Ward 1888.
Aye, Scott.
Sorry, I apologise.
You can do that one last.
Okay.
So I'll do the second last one. Right. So Peter, back into character mode, Peter. And please give us an answer within 15 minutes rather than waffling a lot of shit. Okay. Anyway, this is from Andy Hines.
That's just the attitude we don't need from supporters.
Peter, I've got a dog to feed and go for a walk with. So come on, right. Anyway, right. He's at the garden now, so he's away chasing rabbits or something. Anyway, Andy Hines, Peter, how many times a week do you jump on Twitter and laugh at Chris Graham's claim about Glasgow City Council land deals and dodgy loans? Go on, Peter, how many times?
Every day. It's ridiculous. Do you know, it seems to me like it's just another bit of mischief making, shit stirring, whatever you want to call it, just designed to cause discomfort and disunity. It's pathetic. I've no time for that sort of thing. It's completely baseless allegations.
Well, that was short and sweet. I'd like to say, if anybody missed it, the Chris Graham claims about Graham Spears buying followers on Twitter. That is this taking Scottish football social media into a total Vic and Bob tangent. It's just went, okay, Rangers fans, what can we moan about next? Land deals, that's done. Anything else? The council, no, that's done. Graham Spears, let's link him to Russian Twitter bots. Right, that'll do for this week.
It's the seriousness of the accusation. It's the way it's like it matters. It's and I don't know what goes on in that boy's head, exactly. But really, some sort of therapy is needed, I think.
Okay, right. Final one. Who is it from Stevie Ward? You say?
Yeah, Scott.
So Scott from Scott Ward, from S Ward, 1888. I like this one. Nice wee touch. Peter, could you get the council to clean my granny's clothes? I'm hoping that's not an East End euphemism, Hector.
No, it's certainly not.
At the moment, I'm tied up with this Commonwealth game thing, and to make sure that goes right. But if you email me your granny's address, I'll come round and attend to her close. I
thought you were going to say redirecting the Republican March for Bloody Sunday there, but that's another discussion. Right, okay. Originally, I was going to have a song dedicated to Ali and the 50% cut, but thanks to Hector for reminding me of Bobby Collins there, and I think we'll just have a tribute to Bobby Collins for our song playing out. So just before that, I'd just like to say thanks everyone for listening. The podcast, as normal, will be up available on www.etims.net. We'll work it, try to get it onto iTunes as soon as possible. It will also be available on Spreaker.com if you just look for Etims.net. I'd just like to thank Hector Bandido for joining us tonight.
Thanks, guys.
And finally also to thank Ralph Malv.
Thanks, that was good. Enjoyed that.
Thanks very much, lads. We'll leave you with a tribute to Bobby Collins, and hopefully we'll be speaking to you in the next few weeks. Thank you. Good night.
Little Bobby Collins, architect and inspiration of Reeve's first team, led them into the final against Liverpool.
Don Revie was the number one, and Bobby Collins was the number two into the set in the structure of the great team of the 60s and 70s that Leeds United had.
Losing wasn't in his vocabulary, not at all. He was just, I was very fortunate to him. I watched Bobby playing with a great Celtic team, and he was a great Celtic player. Then, he went to Everton. He was a great Everton player. And what people forget, when Bobby came to our club, Bobby was in the twilight of his career, and he still won Footballer of the Year.
And I think Don and all fairness thought it might only be for a year or two, but Bobby, I played in the game in Turin when he broke his hip. I was 18 by that time, and he played on, and I think if he hadn't have had that injury, he would have played maybe for another couple of years. He was a fabulous captain, very fit, very aggressive, totally in love with football. That was his life.
Every player that come through the ranks then, and was in that Don Revie squad. And I'm even talking about experienced players like the big Jack Charlton. They all learned from Bobby Collins, every one of them. And Billy was voted the greatest captain, in Football League. And if Billy was here today, I think Billy would say he learned a lot from Bobby Collins.
Everybody could see this little guy on the field, and he was little. I think his shoes must have been about size 3. I think his training boots, and you just seen him, and you thought, look at that little fella. No matter how big the opposition, it didn't worry Bobby. He was straight into the tackle and usually come out with the ball. And in fairness, there was more people frightened of Bobby Collins in football than Bobby Collins was frightened of them. I'll tell you that for sure.
And he was the first real player, exponent I seen, bending free kicks. He used to hit free kicks for odd distances, and they would swerve all over the shop. He used to call it the banana shot then, like Cristiano Ronaldo does now. Bobby was the first person I would see doing it. He used to get free kicks for 30 yards Ellen Road, and the crowd would all be going, oh, because Bobby would step up with that big leather ball, and he could make it do fantastic things.
we used to play ex-players game for charity. We had a great side at that time with all the boys, and we played all over Yorkshire. And he didn't understand that these guys were amateur and were a bit clumsy. If they would knock him, you'd hear Bobby say, "Okay, you can give it. We'll see if you can take it." And sure enough, the next tackle he'd be steaming straight in.
We had a very strong ex-players association, but we had to retire Bobby when he was 65. He was still starting, too many confrontations on the pitch. He would stand up to people. That was just his nature.
You knew when you played in a team that Bobby Collins was the captain of. You had to perform at your highest level, or you would have got a real dressing down from him.
Alongside Don Revie, he was a man that put Leeds United on the step to greatness. If Don was a godfather, Bobby was his enforcer.